strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel Brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Well, good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dr. Richard Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my super awesome big brother.
Yeah, still my favorite role.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Same here.
Welcome back.
Same here. We are back, and a belated Happy Mother's Day to all those mothers and mothers-to-be out there.
Indeed. Moms everywhere.
So thank you all for joining. If you're on Facebook, thank you for watching us. And hit that like button, share button, wear it out if you could. And if you're listening to us on the radio, welcome.
We are on WNN in South Florida on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM. Jot down this number if you'd like to join the conversation, 888-565-1470.
Yeah, and definitely either join us
or
with
join
comments.
us on Facebook. You
Right.
can hit the little send email button and let us know what's on your mind.
Absolutely. Ask questions, make comments, join the conversation, any way you like.
Indeed.
So how's the week been?
Good. Hectic. Busy.
Mm-hmm.
Out of town, back in town, out of town again.
Yep.
We're going to New York day after tomorrow.
Yep.
To do one of our favorite trainings. Any sexologists listening will probably be familiar with the SAR, not SARS. That's a respiratory disease.
Right.
But SAR trainings. SAR stands for Sexual Attitude Reassessment, or some folks say realignment or readjustment, or
But it's reassessment.
a lot of things. Yeah, but it's an important training for people who want to work with others in the arena of sexuality, where one needs to be aware of their own soft spots.
Yeah, it's really a holdover from the way psychotherapy used to be trained.
That's
That used to
true.
be to be a psychotherapist, you had to know what it was like to be on the other side of the couch.
That's, yeah, I hate to start the show with offending some in our audience and bringing up that S
No,
word.
you don't.
That snowflake word, but it is unfathomable that one can go through graduate school and do supervised therapy and get a license and go into business and never sit on the couch.
Yeah, and
Never know what it's like to
that's
be
really
the
important.
patient.
Right, that kind of empathy.
Of course, it was mandatory for years.
Yeah.
You couldn't be a therapist if you'd never been in therapy before. And now I shudder to think of how many therapists have never been on the couch.
Oh, well, and I mean, that's the least of their worries.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we railed against the fact that for so many therapists these days, countertransference seems to be sort of a practice specialty?
A treatment modality.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I like how, you never went the clinical route, but filled a very important role of training the therapists, who usually need more work than the patients they're seeing.
Oh, absolutely.
Very often.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad Larry is a big part of our faculty. My business partner, Dr. Rachel Needle, and I co-direct Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, where we hopefully are doing our part to train the next generation of sex therapists and clinical sexologists.
Yep. Yeah.
And you certainly belong among the very highly esteemed list of folks that we're fortunate to have teach for us.
Thank you.
So we're psyched to go this week.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Back up to New York, but that means another short week and just chaos.
Of course.
In between.
Of course.
We also have some wonderful guests coming up in the coming weeks, but we wanted to. Last week was one of those shows where if you were listening, hi Sora, nice to see you back. One of our diehard
hey, Sora.
supporters. We were talking about where our passions probably most lie, and frustrations as well.
Yeah.
The current state of sexuality education.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those shows that felt like it was 10 minutes long, so we just wanted to continue it this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's kind of important.
Info on the SAR. Well, it's pretty last minute if anyone is interested in the SAR. In addition to Sora's asking about it, it's in New York City next Thursday and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a couple of seats available if anyone's interested last minute. Thanks for asking. We were very fortunate to have been bequeathed, I don't know what other word to use, the SAR in the City.
Yes.
From Bathsheba Marcus and the wonderful folks. The name of the practice just flew out of my head. But they're doing what we've been talking about for years, that integrated practice model where there's sex-savvy physicians, gynecologists, urologists, and sex therapists, and nurse practitioners, and pelvic floor physical therapists.
Yeah, it really is so important.
Yeah, as Marilyn would say, the dream team.
The dream team.
Our
That's
mentor,
right.
Marilyn Volker, Queen of Miami. Yeah.
Indeed.
So there's been a lot on my mind since our really rapid rant last week.
Mm-hmm.
Because even, the years we spent in the sex ed wars and how frustrating it is that things don't change and the same fights are being fought, I still haven't seen a whole lot of movement away from that abstinence only till marriage versus the so-called comprehensive, or, what
Right.
the antis call the condom people.
Mm-hmm.
And even, the good guys, the side of medically accurate, scientifically accurate, helpful information about sexuality still seems so stuck in that rut of teaching about consequences.
Yeah.
Teaching about contracepting so you avoid unintended pregnancy, and disease prevention, and consent to such level of alarm that people are afraid to acknowledge that sex is fun and sex is about
Well,
pleasure.
sure.
And young people are not taught about fun, pleasurable sex.
Well, that is almost like the most prohibited aspect of it. When we look at, any attempt to include something that is sex positive in sex ed, it really is met with a lot of controversy. Look at what's been going on. California just passed new sex education guidelines and sort of following along with the national sexuality education guidelines that were set out. But, all the controversy, and really over what? Because they've decided that they're going to include conversations to gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender kids, that they'll actually be willing to talk to them about what they're going through.
You mean schools won't have to pretend that there are no gay and lesbian and bisexual students in their school?
That's right.
Or they just don't exist, or they'll live celibate lives?
That's right.
And divergence because...
Well, that's kind of how it used to be, and nobody really sort of bridged that gap. Remember, before marriage equality,
Right.
right? That really sort of was the sort of presented dead end, that if you were
Of course. Sex was only for married people.
non-heterosexual,
And if you were not legally allowed to get married, then
You
the
can't have sex.
conversation is not directed towards you.
that's right. It's not
Right.
relevant. You're not supposed to be sexual.
But I never got an answer to this, how folks who were trying to teach that ridiculous kind of message would handle kids in school whose parents were divorced.
Well, that's
Well, but you're not
that's
supposed
been
to.
one of
That's it.
those
You stop
things-
having sex
that's-
now.
that
You're not
was
married
always-
anymore. You stop having sex.
Right.
And if your single parent is dating,
Right.
oh, what a message that sends. To
Well,
the
but now
kids.
add to the confusion, because that has come up in the past about a real source of confusion, a real source of disconnect. That these messages that some of these kids are getting, they're sitting there thinking, going, "Wait a minute, my mom dates." Right? My parents are divorced. My parents are dating. So are they evil? Are they wrong? Are they, what is a problem with my parents? But it gets even worse when these are also a lot of parents who are saying the same nonsense to their kids.
Yeah.
And completely oblivious to the fact that the kid sees. They can see right in front of them what you say and what you do are completely different things.
Right.
And all we've really done, and I think this is a function of both sides of the issue really, is basically pushed kids away from a lot of sex ed.
Yeah.
Right? It's pushed
Or
them
left them
more
to
to their
the
peers,
internet.
more to the internet.
Not that there isn't wonderful, powerful sex education available on the internet, but
that's not where they're going.
You don't leave a 14-year-old alone to figure out where that information is and where the smut and the porn and the unhealthy sex ed.
I mean, again, where are kids, people in general, but kids especially, where are they going to? They're not going to websites. They're not going to information
If
sites.
they can hear about them, they are.
Yeah, they got their blogs, they got their feeds. It's mostly Instagram. It's the siloing has really, really taken hold.
Sure.
And I think we've got to figure out a way to try to break that up a little bit.
But
because
websites like Scarleteen, they get traffic. There are young
Yeah.
people that avail themselves to this good, solid information that's pleasure-based.
Right.
It's not fear-based.
Right.
But it's so...
But most of them are directed there. Most of them are not going
Yeah.
there on their own.
Oh,
Most
no.
most of these kids are not going to information sites. They're going
True.
to entertainment sites. And we also now have a generation that more than ever before does not know the difference between marketing and information.
Infotainment.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's all been blurred. So, I mean, we've got to do better than just finding sources to direct them to. We have to get the parents to understand the reality, because that's the biggest obstacle, right? Again, you get sex education guidelines. You have, again, what has been going on in California, just approved all of these things. And so many parents are in an uproar. It's like, wait a minute, you can't talk to kids about identity.
Yeah, I don't want
You
you
can't
coming in.
normalize
I don't want you telling my
homosexuality.
kids that it's okay to be gay,
Right.
right? Like sexuality educators saying, "Come on, what's wrong with you kids? Come on, what are you doing?
But
That
that's
boring
it. Come on,
straight
come on over here.
sex."
Let's be gay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of the attitude. But you know, and I think the stupidity is even more insidious because it's not necessarily upfront about, we don't want you talking to our kids about gay. There is a lot of that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is really couched in, oh, no, man, you're talking about things that we should be, as parents, we should be talking about at home. And you know what? If they were coming anywhere close to meeting their responsibility as parents, we wouldn't be having
Notice
these debates.
they don't talk to their kids at all about their
That's right.
bodies, about
That's right.
pleasure, about
Anything.
consent, about
Except don't do it.
right, or do as I say, not as I do, right? Except when it comes to things that they object to, then they're all of a sudden got an opinion.
Right,
about
exactly.
What
And
their
now
kids
they're gonna
should
speak
be,
up.
You're right, about what
Right.
their kids should be
And
being
all it
taught
is
by
about-
the schools,
Right.
not by them.
Right.
I sounded
And-
like Mrs. Broslovsky.
Yeah, very much so. Right. But you know, I'm going to say what I've said before, and I've said this to somebody directly to their face, and you know, I don't care whatever parent rights people think they have. Parent rights are not absolute. You don't have the right to harm your child, and I personally don't think you really have the right to make your kids stupid,
Good luck with that one.
because that's harming them. That's what
Well,
parents need to understand.
There is a willful ignorance, but you know, we could easily spin off into a lot of other inflammatory conversations about where people choose to think crazy things.
Right. So
voluntarily.
instead of doing that and maybe going down, let's talk a little bit about really what is sex ed. Right? What is it
Right.
that people are objecting to? What is it that we're fighting for?
Right.
So let's talk a little about what constitutes sexuality education. And I do prefer to use the full term.
Of
Instead of
course.
just sex
yeah,
ed,
we talked
because-
about that last week.
Right.
How the brain doesn't do right with that abbreviation, and think that even remember I was talking about Jeb,
Right.
our former governor,
Right.
that sex ed is education about how to have sex. No, it isn't.
Right.
It's education on how to be what we all are, sexual human beings, but ideally how to be healthy
Right. Exactly.
sexual human beings. So sex ed
Exactly.
is supposed to be, as it is what we've been teaching, only, if not us, no one on 5 campuses for 30 years
Yeah.
at Palm Beach State College, what's, I think, in the right place, a health elective. Right? So in the Department of Health Sciences, there's a sexuality education course and a drug education course. But how crazy that in 30 years, on 5 campuses, no one else has ever taught
Right.
these classes.
And also
Once.
in 30 years, what is the most common comment that we get from students in both of those, but especially the sexuality class?
Why the hell didn't we get any of this in high school?
Right. Right.
Always.
I wish
Above
we had this
all
sooner.
else, that's the number one comment that students have put on evaluations
Yep.
at the end of a sex ed class.
Yep.
Why didn't we get any of this in high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And still, remember when we went to, we had to see the president of the whole college, former President Easy,
Mm-hmm.
over the controversy.
Yeah.
Because we had condoms at a health fair. I wasn't even employed yet by the college at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we had to go and explain to the president of Palm Beach State College, it was still Palm Beach Community College in those days,
Right.
That-
Actually, at that time, it was still junior college.
that these were adults, that these were not children,
Mm-hmm.
and that the college, though they just helped themselves to the in loco parentis
Well, that was
role.
that was also my part, and that my take on that too. No, we were not distributing them; we were just
We
making
were
them available.
Making them available.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, how far have we come?
Not very far at all.
No.
And what really hasn't changed, what I started to say before, is there's really the best sex ed, maybe except for, what's that curriculum, Our Whole Lives by the Unitarian Universalist Church.
Mm-hmm.
Even they gently, timidly, I'd say, talk about pleasure.
Right.
The World Health Organization definition of sexual health includes language of not just non-exploitation, but pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
The American values do not.
No.
Right.
No. Well, because we're not allowed to really tell young people that it feels good.
That's right. If
You're
it
not
feels
allowed
good,
to tell
they'll wanna
them that
do
it really is about
That's right.
pleasure.
It's not like they don't
That's right.
discover that on their own anyway.
That's right. Because then they're going to have sex and they're going to get diseases.
And it'll be our fault.
That's right.
That was, we honestly used to get that,
Oh,
that
I know. I'm not
criticism
kidding when I
about,
say that.
about condom distribution.
Mm-hmm.
That if we make condoms available and a kid thinks they're safe because of us, because we deluded them into a false sense of security that if they have condoms, nothing will ever happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they should get pregnant or contract an infection, then it's our fault for giving them permission to
Right.
have sex.
Right.
So instead, keeping them ignorant is justified.
That's right.
And pretend that they won't learn about it on TV. They won't learn about it on spring break. They won't learn about, well, actually, they'll learn about it the hard way. They'll learn about it by being assaulted and left drunk in an alley with their bathing suit.
Yeah, we're going to have another conversation about that. All right.
Yeah.
So going back to what sex ed really consists of, sexuality education. And again, what people have the hardest time with is the aspect of applying this to younger children. So first graders, second graders, right? 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. What is sexuality education for young children?
How to know your body, own your body,
Mm-hmm.
feel empowered to be, like we used to get the little kids at Montessori, right?
Yeah.
I'm the boss of my body.
That's right.
That's a powerful thing, by the way. If you can
Oh, yeah.
picture 25, 30 little 3- and 4-year-olds all crowded around you,
Mm-hmm.
all yelling out in unison, I'm the boss of my body.
Right.
That's goosebump stuff.
Absolutely. Now, again, looking at that, all right, so what are we talking to them about their bodies? We're teaching them proper names, right? And we've, for many, many years, and I wish people would really, again, stop all of the nonsense and understand basic logic that when kids can name their body parts,
They can own them.
they can own them and they can talk about them. And a kid that can name body parts is much less likely to be abused.
Right. Right.
Right? I
And
mean,
a kid
that
that's
deserves some
taught-
airplay.
And people that think that 3- and 4-year-olds are too young to get a message that they own their bodies, and only certain circumstances, like if they're at the pediatrician or if mom and dad still have to help them with some basics of hygiene, period. Otherwise, nobody has the right to touch them anywhere, especially in their genitals, without consent.
Right.
And as children, they should not be giving people consent to touch their genitals.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that they can know deep down in their core that if something happens, they have trusted adults that not only they could go to, but who will believe them.
Now, what horrible messages to give kids.
We shouldn't
you know,
laugh
it's
about this.
I know.
mean,
I'm
it's
sorry.
so tragic.
My head will explode if I don't.
When a kid says to a parent, Uncle Max did this, and the parent says, oh, stop it. Don't talk like that. Your Uncle Max is a wonderful man. Don't ever say that again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, oh, great. There's a way for a kid to grow up safe and secure.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And,
so
feel
boundaries.
insane.
Right?
Yeah.
Boundaries, ownership about the body, how the body works, proper names for parts, proper names for functions. What is objectionable about this?
Well, but I think here comes some, right? I think part of that message is that we're entitled to, we're allowed to derive pleasure from our bodies, that parts of our body, all of our bodies feel good and can be pleasurable.
Well, yeah,
Amazing
but that's
how
not
you
even
see-
really part of
You
that,
see a baby
that
in
messaging.
in a playpen, and fingers are going in noses, and foots are trying to get into mouths, and nobody does anything but, oh, look how cute, until the baby goes for reaching down there, and then everybody starts, backs get tight, and they go, oh, don't stop, and the messages start right there.
Well, but again, but
Don't
that's,
touch that. You'll
but-
go blind.
But even some will take that to, the reaction, oh, whether they're interested in their genitals, they must have been sexually abused. How many people go right to there, right?
Yeah.
If there's any kind of
How
experience.
many times have we heard if a girl knows the word clitoris, who's touching you? How do you know that word?
Right.
Like that's an
Right.
indicator
Right.
of abuse,
Right.
that a girl knows all the proper names of her body
Right.
part.
So parents also need to
Great
understand
pleasure.
that we are sexual
Yes.
beings. That is our wiring. These things are starting. Our sexual response, right, is beginning before we ever take our first breath, while we are feti. Right? We are inside, in utero. We're getting erections. Girls are getting the vaginal, the engorgement, the swelling, the genital tissue reactions that we get as sexual response. They're happening before we're born, and they're going to keep happening until the day we die. We cannot escape the fact that we are sexual beings from beginning to end.
Right.
So to embrace that idea and to be healthy, to understand what it means to be connected to yourself, to have healthy senses and attitudes about one's own sense of masculinity, femininity, and all the shades in between,
Right.
right? Basically, to be comfortable with ourself.
But and of course it's a mind, body, spirit thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's been coming up a lot in supervision the past couple of weeks is people need to get more comfortable with their the idea of themselves as erotic beings, not just sexual beings with sexual parts, but having erotic minds. In fact, there's a great book if anybody wants to jump right in.
Oh, The Erotic Mind.
Jack Moran's The
Yeah.
Erotic Mind.
Mm-hmm.
That every human being has an erotic template, certain things that they find arousing, that they discover. Nobody chooses. Nobody says, I think I'll be turned on by this, right? Everyone, straight, gay, male, female, young, old people, become aware of their sexuality. And that's sort of this whatever template, mapping, however you want to think about it. It's the formation of our personality. Again, like you said, what we are as human beings,
Yeah.
not a collection of genital acts.
Right, exactly.
If
This
people
is our
understood
core.
sexuality as that, then hopefully the ideal, as we again start to run out our minutes, is that we can take the stigma, as Erica just pointed out, take this fear out of out of talking about sex
Yeah.
and pleasure. And next week we'll have to wait to talk about this documentary we just saw on spring break. I thought that stuff died in the heyday of MTV, but again,
Oh, no.
again, I bust myself being naive. It's on steroids now. It's worse than ever.
That's right.
And that now we see a generation of young girls who giggle about the prospect that, they're not going to be safe. They're likely going to be molested.
Yeah, they laugh about their sexual assault.
They might have their bikini top torn off while guys videotape it on the beach at Panama City. And what they're laughing about and sharing with their friends and getting drunk and thinking is sport is sex offenses.
Absolutely.
Committed,
Absolutely.
Committed on film, out on camera, out in public, And
Right.
this is
And I've said this before, and again, we see this with a lot of the video. And I made this comment, I think, when I was by myself, when you were on the road. We'll revisit this idea that it's one thing for guys to talk the way they talk and treat women the way they treat them. We can talk all about rape culture. We can talk all about how the toxic masculinities and insecure, all these things. But we have to really get a handle on the fact that girls are growing up buying into this as well.
Absolutely.
They are working off the same scripts, right? Criticize guys as much as you want, but this is becoming the reality. And this is becoming a major influence on young girls.
Yeah.
And we definitely need to do something about that.
Yeah. Even I mean, again, there's nothing new about this, but it just seems to be getting exponentially bigger all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What passes for empowered female sexuality is still buying into the same old male fantasy scripts.
Well, I was talking
We
about,
should talk
talk about
about,
dating myself. I was talking about this during
What's his
the
name?
80s with
Yeah.
Madonna and the Salt and Pepper
But
and a lot of these girl groups that were
documentarian
coming up.
with the odd name.
Soot Jolly.
Yeah. Next week, maybe.
Yeah, and talk a
we
little
can
bit
talk
about that.
that.
Right? But yeah, I mean, but that whole sense of what has become the norm, right? Especially for sex and sexuality, and the fact that, again, I can't get past the fact that girls are basically buying into those same values and accepting the norms that we criticize when we hear guys talk that way.
Yeah.
You know, the complete separation from a sense of intimacy, a sense of self, that emotional connection. Right? I'm not saying sex is about emotion, but the complete divorcing of oneself, almost to the point where it seems like it's defensive.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I think we really want to look at, because it's another, I think, revisiting of an old kind of thing. One of the saddest things I ever heard, and there was a 14-year-old girl telling me about, again, performing a lot of oral sex on boys. You know, and she was sent to me because, you know, she was caught in a school, that kind of thing. I was still at Planned Parenthood. But it was one of the saddest thing was, when I'm doing that to the boys, I know they're not going to be trying to touch me. So how many girls, their sexual activity is really about protecting themselves, not for pleasure, not for enjoyment.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have to move on that.
And
So
one of these days we'll end on a real happy, sexy, pleasurable place, but the just the disgusting lack of good information and sexual health. All of us sexologists need to keep on fighting in the trenches and clawing away until we get there. But we'll
Yes.
get there.
We'll get
Keep
there.
talking about sex.
Right.
And join
in
us
a positive and honest way.
next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Good night. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.